I send it to JJ, and then I just get a text. This is lol.
In this week's episode of Unboxed, I'm speaking to Ben Doyle, aka Rvbberduck.
I think your ambition should always just outstrip your ability. I watch stuff and I'm like, I can make that. I can't.
Who you may know as the director behind some of the biggest moments in YouTube. As the director of KSI's documentary Can't Lose for NOTWOWAYS.
I thought I was the boy. I was like, find me someone else that's done a feature film at the age of 21.
Through this next hour, we are going to provide you with the ultimate masterclass in becoming a director in 2024.
Sent out 200 emails, got 7 replies, 6 no's, 1 was an interview, and then I was like, this is my in.
Ben and the company he founded alongside Callux called AfterParty Studios has gone from strength to strength, working with some of the biggest brands in the country. Sit back, relax, and I hope you enjoy this episode of Unboxed with Ben Doyle. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
It feels long overdue. I'm super excited to get into this. I think the biggest thing for me is trying to spend the next 45 minutes to an hour with you, creating the ultimate kind of masterclass, if you will, for young people looking to get into the film and creative industry, which you have been at the forefront of, I think, in this country, especially on the social space. So there's so much to get into, bro.
Yeah.
Where do we begin? Where did it very quickly start for you? How did you get into this?
Whoa, that's big. Firstly, I've got to say, it's a masterclass, but I'm still a student. So, like, I think that's the thing is that...
lesson number one.
Lesson number one is that you never stop learning, right? You never... It goes... Like, there's so much to learn that I think I still want to be, like, 90 years old, learning, figuring stuff out. But, yeah, where did it start? It very first started, I have to give credit to my like, school friend, Joe. We were around my parents' house, and my sister got a camcorder in like, this was like 2007 or something like that for Christmas, and she didn't care about it, and it was on the side, and my mate Joe was like, should we make a film? Like, we just after school, like, messing about one day, and he's like, let's make a film. And we took this, like, it was like tapes, we filmed like a comedy skit, and then edited it in Windows Movie Maker and took it into school, and my form tutor, like, let us play it to the class, and people laughed. And I was like, whoa, this is
funny.
Yeah, this is a drug. Like, this is also, I'm borrowing other people's humor. Like, I'm not doing anything funny. It's them being funny. And then but then it's like, I'm part of it. And that was like the moment that I was like, this is my identity in the world. I kind of wandered around school for years being like, I don't really know what I want to be or what I am. And then that was it. And I was like, whoa, this is the power that I can do stuff. And then started making videos all the time. Every week they'd let us play another one in class. Things like just amazing teachers that I had that spotted that was our passion. And then I remember doing work experience when I was like 14 at MTV. So I'd emailed loads of places. I got a work experience placement at one place, a little production company in like Enfield where I grew up. And then the week before I was supposed to go and do that, like the school work experience, MTV replied to my email and were like, do you want to come and do work experience with us? And I was like, oh, like, I don't want to bin off these guys, but MTV. Like, that's my childhood. And so I went there for 2 weeks, and then I went to the other place afterwards. I was like, can I come here afterwards? So I did like a month of work when I was 14, and it was the best thing ever. And I was like, this is what I want to do day in, day out. I got that feeling inside where I'm like, that's it. Went from there, did loads of work experience, all like half term, summer holidays, running on sets, still making stuff. When I was 16, I tried to leave school. I was like, I want to get out of here, and I want to go into the working world. Went to like try and get a job that summer, and just no one would hire a 16-year-old, and I couldn't understand why. I was just like, but I know everything. Like, why wouldn't you want me? Left there, ended up not being able to get a job, and was like, I'll go back to school for another year. And then when I was 17, was like, I'm actually leaving now. I'm going to put the pressure on. My parents were like, cool, you've got until the end of the summer holidays. Otherwise, you just need to get any old job to pay the bills, pay some rent, and that's that. So that put the pressure on. I ended up getting a job in an ad agency after sending out, I think I sent out 200 emails, got 7 replies, 6 no's, 1 was an interview. And then I was like, this is my in, delivering people's packages around a building.
Just about 200 emails. 7 replies,
6 no's.
6 no's and 1 yes.
1 maybe.
1 maybe.
1 maybe.
That's enough.
Exactly, and that's it.
Yeah.
It's a numbers game, right? And then they were just like, I remember going to this interview and being like, I'm never going to get this job. They were talking to me about football, and I was like, I don't like football. I hate football. And they're like, what team do you support? And I was like, Spurs. And that was like literally like they were like, oh, we'll get on well here then. And
That's a brave answer, to be honest. That could have gone. That could have gone
they
either
did
way.
start at the lift. They were like talking about football, and I was just like, "Get me in the lift and get me out of this interview." And for the first 3 months, my first 3 months probation, they were like, they played TalkSport every morning, and were like making football banter. And I was like, I just need to get past the probation period, and then to think I'm a football fan. And then literally the day they gave me my contract, I was like, I hate football, by the way. Like, I can't do this anymore. But yeah, works there. I was inside the building, and I was like, I can bother people from the inside now. I've got the foot in the door. I ended up they started up a production company in house called Black Sheep Studios. I got a job in there as like as a runner, essentially, inside the production company. And then after like 7-8 months was like, actually I want to be on set, because I was doing loads of admin stuff. Went on to started being a camera assistant and like basically doing the like clapperboard thing.
And it's an important job.
That is.
Someone has to do it.
It's the most important job. And memory cards, doing memory cards, which is the most important job. Yeah, a job can fall apart from bad handling of memory cards. Did that, and then ended up going through the freelance world and climbing up, being like, I want to be a DP, and then met Callux, and that was when everything changed.
So what happened?
So I meet Cal. So I'm a camera assistant. I'm like a second AC, it's called. So it's charging batteries, doing memory cards, and I'm on a shoot for KFC 99 gigs way back. This is 2015, and I get put on the job because it was like traveling Europe for 3 weeks, and they were like, we've got a YouTuber on it, on this job, and we want someone like young that watches YouTube, and
I'm gonna scare him off.
Yeah. And like there's someone to just become friends with him, and like on the shoot, it's a long shoot, stuff like that. Obviously, again, I'd never watched YouTube, but they were like, you know Callux, right? And I'm like, yeah. Like, who's Callux? Because I didn't grow up. I grew up watching kids TV, and on the shoot for the 3 weeks, it was like the maddest 3-week shoot of, 6 a.m. till 2 a.m. churning, constantly shooting, moving countries every 2-3 days. And I didn't speak to Cal once, other than a morning and an evening or whatever, until the last day. We were at Heathrow Airport, literally going. It was a literal sliding doors moment where we're walking out of Heathrow Airport. Cal's got his trolley with his suitcases on, and everyone's saying goodbye to each other. And then he was just like, turns to me and he's like, I need some help filming my YouTube videos. Like, can I take your number and like I'll give you a shout? And I was like, yeah, sure. Nice to meet you. And yeah. And then he went off, I went off, and then a month later, like we started working together, and then after a year of working together, started AfterParty. So like it was like a year of essentially, we kind of realized there was a space for like making. I wanted to make higher production value stuff on YouTube, and he was like enabling that and had the money, I guess, to invest in hiring kit and the desire to do it, and saw something in me. And then all of his mates that were the sidemen and everyone else in that community started being like, come and make, when they wanted to do like a 1 million subscriber special documentary or whatever. I did one for Manny, one for Simon. They would bring me in to come and do that with them. And then after like a year, we were like, there feels like there's an actual, I said it as a joke. I was like, let's start a production company. And then he was like, that's a good idea. Let's do that. And then that's how it was born. Like, I think, that moment was like, when I think back to that Heathrow Airport moment, like where I would be now, I have no idea.
If that didn't happen, if the flight was delayed,
or
if something
happened,
out of
literally
place.
anything. If I had been like, I'm just gonna go to the toilet whilst everyone gets their bags and he'd gone, I wouldn't have got his number. Like that wouldn't have happened.
So looking back at that time, what stands out to you as like the work highlight? If there was one piece of work that you did that just sort of typified everything that you were aiming to do.
Obviously, first one has to be Can't Lose, doing the feature film with JJ about boxing. Was just like that. I thought that I grew up thinking that you make a feature film as like your life's work, and then I was 21 when I did that, and I did it. And
21.
Yeah, 20. Yeah. I was 21, and it was like, it messed me up. Like post that, it messed me up. But like at the time, I was like, this is incredible. Like we played it and we did a massive cinema screening for it. You're stood on stage at the minute, and I've got JJ one side, Cal the other side, an audience of hundreds of people watching it, and I was like, this is magic. Like, this is, I think so much of what we do, especially in the social world, is like you never get to see people watch something, and like to sit in the middle of a crowd watching something that you've made for the last couple of years is magical.
How did it mess you up?
How did it mess me up? My ego was the size of, I wouldn't be able to fit in this room if I still had that ego. Like, doing a feature film at the age of 21 is like, should come with a warning. It doesn't happen, right? Like, that's the amazing thing about this world is that JJ put me on. JJ was like, here's an opportunity, and it all blew up. It started off as a little YouTube video, and it got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger because the fight was getting bigger. And he gave me amazing access. And
which fight was this, just for those?
This was for the Joe Weller fight. So we were filming, and it got released just before the Logan Paul fight. But it literally, like, the fight was, I'd heard about this fight being a thing before it was like properly announced and stuff, and I said to Cal, I want to make a film about that. And Cal was like, let me speak to JJ and see what we can make happen. And then we started filming it, and it was literally just me in a Sony FS7 following him around, kind of. I wasn't a director then. I didn't really know. I didn't want to be a director. I was just like filming it. I was like, camera guy, I'm filming you, but I'm poking questions constantly, and it kind of like over those months, that was when I became a director. It got to the point at the end where the film's done and it goes out, and you spent all this time, spent a year. Sony Pictures bought it, and it went out, and it got like a global distribution. And then you're sat there afterwards being like, what now? Like, you know, that the game just continues. The game, it's like everyone was saying to me, what's the next film? What's the next film going to be? Like, what do you want to do next? And I thought, I didn't mean to make this. Like, this was an accident. I thought I was the boy. I was like, I've done a feature film at the age of 21. Find me someone else that's done a feature film at the age of 21. Obviously, like, in my brain, neglecting the fact that it wasn't because of me that it was such a big success. It was JJ, right? It was his fight, and that was what made it massive. Then after that, I kind of then like spiral, because there was nothing that I could find. Like, there was nothing I could do at that point in my career. I wasn't experienced enough that would better it. And so, like, you're just like, what on earth do I do now? Like, where do I go? Do I make another film? Do I, you know, who am I? What am I doing? I've achieved the thing that I thought was going to be the greatest achievement of my life. I've done it. Nothing really has changed materially. Everyone's just like, cool, next piece of work, please. And then you're just like sat there alone by yourself at the end of the day, when you've been surrounded by all these people and all this hype for months and weeks. And I knew that nothing for a long time would beat that feeling, like that high. But yeah, I ended up in therapy after it. I ended up like, I think it basically like had this effect on me where I was like, this has changed me in some way, but I can't tell how. And I know that something's going on. I know I'm doing, I often speak to Cal about it, because like Cal was like, you turned into a dickhead after that. Like, he was like, after finishing that film and then that like year following, it just like filled me with something where I was like, I'm clearly compensating for something that isn't happening to me, or like how I feel I should feel.
Yeah.
And then I end up in the end, I end up in therapy and figure it all out and unpick it, and lose the ego. I think ego is such a massive part of the problem.
And was that because you were walking around like the guy, you were trying to almost compensate for the fact that you were that you had this high, so you had to live in the high, because to get a high like that again is actually very difficult, because it's almost a once in a lifetime. So like a lot of people would do their whole life's career for an opportunity to make a film about someone like JJ. In that moment, with all the hype and the fanfare, you get that at 21. You then think maybe that's the norm, that's the standard now. How do you ever get back to that?
That's the base. Look, I wasn't equipped. Like, I wasn't equipped for that to happen at the time. Like, I'm so grateful it did, and I learned so much from it. But looking back, like, that's why I say it should come with a warning. Like, I hadn't had the failures and all the things that you need to on that journey. By the time you do a feature film when you're in your 30s or your 40s or whatever, and you've been through it, and you've known failure and you've known success and you've known bits and pieces, and then you do it, I think that's like super useful in the toolkit. And I think when you do it at 21, and then you're like, I have nothing to compare this to, I have no one, I'm not surrounded, I didn't come through a conventional route, I haven't got a mentor, I haven't got anyone that's like, now do this, or now, like, anyone telling me what to do. I'd kind of been winging it and figuring it out. and yeah, and I think that's it. It's just that you're walking around being like, I should feel like this, and I should be this, and I should be doing this, and I should be on to my next film. I should have been cooking my next film whilst making that, and that should follow it up a year later. Like, that's how the industry goes, and it wasn't happening. I'm going into meetings, and things aren't getting commissioned quite as swiftly as I'm expecting them to. And it's like that thing, you know, it then, when it's not actually happening to you, you then try and make it seem like it is, or make it feel like it is, or replicate it somehow, which then comes across just like in that it's just a spiral, because then you can't do any good work because you're in your head so much and everything needs to be better. I think that's it, is knowing that some work just like you say, stands out. Some work, every job, you strive for it to be that, but it can't be.
You have to just do your best in every moment, every opportunity, and rather than almost seeing things as too big or on a pedestal, just bringing everything down to the day to day, right? Is what you're saying?
Yeah, I think it's like always trying to make everything the best you can possibly make it. I think your ambition should always just outstrip your ability. I think you should be striving for something that you know. I watch stuff and I'm like, I can make that. I can't, but like, I'm gonna try, and I want to watch that and feel like that's what I'm aiming for. Like, I think that's the thing, is you should always be just out of your range, like, and then you'll get there, and then you want to be doing something else, and it will constantly keep evolving every way you want to. Like, every time you finish something, you then want to do better the next one, and better and better and better and better. And the reality is, yeah, that there are some things you'll do and it just won't work, and sometimes that's your fault, and sometimes that's a collective fault. Like, that's just the way we're making subjective stuff. That's also the thing, is that you can't make, like, there are 1-star reviews of Can't Lose, there are 5-star reviews of Can't Lose, there's everything in between.
How did you deal with the 1-star reviews?
I don't read them. Like, I'm a classic, you know, as every YouTuber will ever tell you, don't read the comments. I remember doing like my first one of Cal's videos, and the first time any crew that I bring into like the YouTube world, when they've come from the traditional world and they're not used to comment sections, I know they sit there and they scroll through the comments afterwards. They'll tell me, they'll send me a comment, a screenshot, or something like that, that's like picking out their bit of work. If they're a costume designer, there'll be a comment that'll be like, these costumes are mad, and that will make you feel something. I think that if you give that much weight to the good comments, you have to really give that much weight to the bad comments, the vocal minority. And like, so I just kind of don't now. I think the first time I did, I remember opening up JJ's comment section the first time I did a video for him that was like, it was called like Gold Sax Man or something like that. He was dressed in like a gold morph suit, and he was playing a saxophone. And I remember like clicking on the comments and being like, whoa, this is something else. I wasn't used to that from Callux's stuff. But yeah, I think like there will always be people that love your work regardless of what you do. There will be people that hate your work regardless of what you do. And I think you've just got to kind of listen to you step back from it, right, and listen to the mood music. And I can tell when I send an edit to someone, to my producer or to a client or to whatever, I can tell if they do or don't like the work instantly based on their reaction. And so I think that you don't actually need to read like raw comments to know. I can feel if something feels good, and I can feel if it feels bad. That said, sometimes you put something out, you expect it to be great, and it doesn't get a good response. Sometimes you put something out that you think is rubbish, and people love it. And
Are there any examples of those that kind of immediately come to mind?
I have a JJ specific one that never really. This is like this. So Can't Lose, made like for me career wise and well received and great for the scene at the time. And then following that, we were making some short films. I did a couple short films with JJ. When we were like, he kind of was toying with the idea of getting into acting.
This was Late in America time.
This was post Late in America, so this would have been like 2018, something like that. We did one short film where he was like being a taxi driver, and it was like a kind of horror comedy kind of thing, and that went really well. And then we were like, a couple months later, let's make another short film, and we came up with this idea. Me and Ed, who I started AfterParty with, who's like an incredible script writer. He comes up with this film script. It's set in a Mexican restaurant. It's like a one-shot film. I guess for me, I was trying to be like, how do we show that JJ has great acting skills, because he does. And I was like, how do we make the mainstream world understand that he can hold a character beyond just like a comedy skit in a YouTube video? So we make this. We make this film, and it's all about a bunch of friends, 4 friends that go to a Mexican restaurant. And then when one of them goes to I think JJ goes to the toilet, and then someone puts like acid or something in everyone's drinks and doesn't tell JJ, doesn't tell everyone or whatever. And then the whole room starts spinning. Everyone's got tie-dye t-shirts on. The table was on a motor. It starts moving. The wall goes into slow-mo. Like it turns into this trip. We shot it. We did like 11 takes. We shot it all in one day. Like now, again, this is why I say like you have to do these things to learn what's possible and what's not possible. It was a very difficult shoot. We shot 11 takes. It was on a Steadicam, so the Steadicam operator's like knackered by the 11th take of like a 10-minute film. The actors, everyone's tired. We eventually get it-ish. Like we get a version that's like a decent take of it for everyone, performance-wise and camera-wise. It's not perfect, but it's a one shot. So that's like probably a month of work to get to that point. We then grade it, mix it, sound design it, do all the music, do everything, and we sit back. Me and the team sit back, and we're like, "This is sick! Like this is really good. We're really happy with it. It's what we aimed to make." And then I remember, like it's like a Friday night. I send it to JJ, and then I don't get a reply for like 20 minutes, and then I just get a text. This is shit, lol. And I was like,
"Oh no,
this has never happened before. Like I've never sent something to someone and they've not liked it, or like it's been such an instant response."
That was the first time you'd had like clear cut.
That's the first time. People are normally like, they'll be thinking that and they'll say something, indirectly, whatever, and in the end, the same outcome comes out of it, but you don't actually know, and you feel a bit confused. It was like I was like, whoa, okay. Fair enough. Like, it's a subjective thing. We're making art. Like that's what we're trying to make. And so I remember just sitting there and being like, what do we do now? Kind of thing. But it was the best thing that ever happened. Like it was, at the time it was horrendous and it was the worst thing that ever happened. And you just want to make stuff that people love and people appreciate and everyone thinks is great. But it made me realize like that's not always going to happen. And you need to put things in place to make sure, why didn't that? Why was that reaction? That reaction was totally fair. Like that reaction was valid. It wasn't good enough. And we'd all kind of kid ourselves into being like, it's great, right? It's great. Like we're all looking at each other, but it doesn't matter.
But also because I think it comes back partly to the creative ambition of maybe what you were trying to achieve, right? That the shoot sounded pretty intense. It sounded difficult. You get lost in the logistics. You ignore the fact that maybe the creative needs work or isn't good enough, or actually the execution isn't there because you're just trying to get through the shoot and get something. So your standard drops because and I think it's a good lesson for all creatives. You need to keep the actual creative execution tempered and at a level that you can actually execute, because then you can make that the best it can be rather than worrying about the logistics.
Yeah, and also like remembering that this was going on his YouTube channel, and like that's why the brain that he was watching it with was like, my audience aren't going to get this. This is like, this is doing too much. This is going, it didn't need to be a one shot. It could have been, it would have worked with an edit. We could have tweaked it, like because it was the nature of one shot. There was nothing that also. It wasn't like he could be like, oh, let's work on it, or let's figure it out in the edit.
This is what it is.
Yeah, it's that. Take it or leave it, and like that. And he understands his audience better than anyone. So I think that was the learning for me, was like, you need to involve these like people more. Allow for that flex, allow for that, like the chances of you nailing it every single time are impossible. It doesn't exist, it won't happen.
To your point, because we spoke about this slightly before the show, that rejection is such an important thing to get to grips with as a creative. Can you dig into that a little bit? Why is rejection so important for creatives to embrace?
It's like the number one part of the job is being rejected, and I think that you just have to get used to it. You have to separate the ego from the idea, from your personal, what you want to do with your career. Like, the reality of the job is that, again, it's so subjective. Like, it's not numbers on spreadsheets. It's like random ideas. There's a million things you could do for every brief that comes in. We work on stuff all the time, right? Like, I'll throw 10 ideas at you, and you could hate all 10, and it's your brand. Like aim. You're paying me ultimately. Like if I want to make stuff that I just you know, in my echo chamber, I should make art house films that I self fund. If I'm making commercials, it's not me. You're paying for a service. You're paying for like an interpretation of my art. You want my style on it, but it needs to fit into your world and what you're trying to do with your product. So I think it's just like a process. I think a lot of people come out of film school being like I'm gonna make art. This is all about what I want to make. What's in here the world needs to hear it. I think the reality is when you get to it, when you're like, I need to pay the bills, is that someone is paying you to make something. They want your stamp on it to a degree, and ultimately they just want to make something to sell a product, or they want to do something that's serving their goals. And so rejection then becomes an inherent part of it, because like you're trying to guess to a degree what they want, or like show them something where you're trying to push their boundaries and be like, how about this? You know, you want this, but how about we take it here? And the chances are they're going to say no. Also, as a director, the work, like you work in treatments, and like I say, I live with 2 directors. The amount of treatments that come out of my house are, you know, you're probably winning 1 in 10 jobs. You know, you're doing 9 treatments. That's like a day or 2 of work, digging into an idea. This is how I do it. This is my mark on it. And then you get a no. You might not even get a no. You might just get ghosted. You'll send it, and you know, in the music video world, you'll send a treatment off, and you'll hear nothing. And you'll be like, where did that go? You'll see the music video come out, and you'll be like, okay, I didn't get the job then. And I think that you have to grow a thick skin. You have to know that like they're not saying we don't think you're good at your job. They're just like saying the right idea for this. And often you're a creative interfacing with a marketing team or a sales team. You know, an idea might get through the creatives, and then it gets to the next level of the higher people in the company, and then they're like, no, that ain't our tone of voice or whatever, and you got to respect that. I think that's comes with the territory. If you want to put your mark on stuff, you've got to be ready for people to be like, well, too much, or don't want it, or whatever. But that's why that JJ scenario is so great, because like from that moment on, like that got rid of all. I think in a very small space of time, I went to therapy, dealt with the like, you know, everything is me and I am everything. I'm like the main character in this story, and also dealt with the like rejection and the pain of it, to just be like, it's a collaboration between loads of people trying to all get to a common goal where we all want to make something that people watch and go, that's sick. That's really the reaction that I think everyone's looking for, in this one anyway, and it's a team effort, it's a collaboration, and you've got to listen to all these different voices, whether that's client side or agency side, or in the crew, or the you know, the runner saying, how about this? You know, all these voices, all come together to make something that's greater than the sum of its parts. Yeah,
I like the piece on stop thinking you're the main character. Because I think especially when you're young and you have success young, or you're talented, right? Talented, creative people who get lauded and people think their work is great. Often it's easy to think that it's all about you, but actually it's not. There's a collaboration at every element, at every point of the process. And so I think, and that's one thing which I love about how you guys work, is the teams you bring around it, the crews, everyone's so talented. You're almost the conductor of incredible talent all coming together to form, you know, the team behind the execution of an idea. Let's get into NOTWOWAYS a little bit, because obviously NOTWOWAYS, you know, you have been, talk about a stamp, right? That brand, I think, from a visual, creative, and, you know, marketing perspective, is so stamped with you and with AfterParty and with everything that you guys have done with that, especially on the rollouts. Obviously, they're so iconic. People know them. People love them. What has been your favorite one of those that you've ever produced?
Oh, that's tough, because that brand built me, right? Like that was me being like, I want to get into the commercials world. And the first NOTWOWAYS film we made for 80 quid, which was the hire of one lens, I called him a favour off of a DP, Marty, and yeah, we went and made those first couple films for like no money. My favourite, I think that's hard. That's like choosing between your kids.
What was like the high, maybe not favourite in terms of output, but the highlight to work on?
I think like they've always been, I've always gone into NOTWOWAYS films with like, how do I learn something from this? I think that's it's a great test ground. Like, I'm very fortunate in the same way that Can't Lose allowed me to like learn documentary on the job, very unusual. This was allowing me to learn like my style and figure it out, and Cal and Rocky just believed in the process and were like, cool, let's do it together. And I know that I was sending ideas to Cal being like, let's do this. And I know that the business side of the business is like, I don't want to spend that much money on making an advert, that's nuts. But like, he was like, no, we should, it's the story, it's the brand, like that's going to build the brand with it. I guess like the walking up the wall one was technically was a technical challenge. I think there's something in each of the films. I think walking up the walls, I was like, it's a really simple idea, but it's actually very difficult to pull off. That like was a very stressful shoot. We were all there being like, is this actually going to work? And so then, yeah, walking up the walls, and we had to remove all the wires out, and she was actually walking up a studio wall. Everyone thought, I had to release it behind the scenes because people thought we'd cheated it. People thought that we'd like twisted the camera and she was just walking along the floor. And I was like, no, we did it. We did it for real. That was great for that. There's the turn heads, I think, has always been a favourite of mine, where the guy walks in and everyone in the shop is looking at him, because I think that's like just a simple concept. And that was me learning to work with extras. Like how do I direct a cast of? I've always focused in on one or two characters. Now I've got 15 other people that need some level of direction from me.
What did you learn from that one?
To make your mind up before the shoot day. Like when you've got your orchestra and you're the conductor and you've got 15 extras looking at you, and you might not have thought about that. On that shoot, I hadn't really thought until they were stood in front of me. Oh yeah, they need something to do. Like, are they shopping? Are they picking up something? What are they doing? So that made me think, like, you need to think about this, step back and think about the cast as a whole bunch of people, and you need to think, I need to know 2 weeks out what those people in the background are doing, not just making it up as you go along. I think like I love the very first film that we did. It's called Wear Me Out, and it was running around London, and it was just a crew of 2 people, and then the 2 models and Cal and Rocky running around like the Tate Modern and filming all this stuff, very like guerrilla filmmaking style. And I just love that because it was like, that was so pure. There was no pressure on it. There was no like, we didn't know what the brand was. They hadn't sold us any trainers yet. We didn't know what it was going to be, and it was going to sell out in 63 seconds. But I think that it was just like filmmaking at its like purest, where there's not really any money on the line. We weren't getting paid for it. We were just doing it. We were just running around. Let's make something that we feel really good about. And like I want the opening title to be a tattoo of the title, which is still on my ankle. Wear Me Out.
Very good. Yeah.
I was like that. You know, it felt, and I think the reason why I got that tattoo is I knew it was going to be something. I knew this was like a turning point in something somewhere. It felt special. You could feel the energy with Cal and Rocky like bubbling over, and there was a bit of hype around it. But yeah, everything up until like the last one that I did was the miniatures one in February. That was like a little doll's house, and it was like a callback to one of the earlier films. And I think that was like, I enjoyed that because that was all playing with scale and VFX and how do I take this full-size guy and put him into a miniature set, opening the door was like another challenge. But what I also love about No Two Ways as well is like is like they're a creative brand and they love a creative idea. I think like the fact that they allow me to go and make those films, and that they will continue to go on to allow other filmmakers to make stuff. My fiance Edie made one of the ones about the formulas that was about Sam when he was doing the ice skating, and like that's her mark, putting her stamp on it. It wasn't a film that I would ever be able to make because it's comes from inside her. And like I think that's what excites me about No Two Ways is like I kind of did it for a couple of years and I've almost like set it free now. It's become massive, right? They're a huge brand. They've got loads of people, massive teams, and I think like that's what's exciting is to see who does the next one. And I think that could become a thing in itself. What creators, what filmmakers do they bring in to come and interpret the brand and the ethos of what No Two Ways means in a different way, in a different language? It's super exciting.
Yeah. And fast forward, you're now spending probably most of your time working with like elite big brands, doing big briefs and you know, shoots that probably I'd imagine 10 years ago you would never have thought you'd be working on. The Sky TV's launch, all these crazy things. Can you take us through some of the big kind of headlines or the big moments that you've just sort of looked at and gone, wow, that is a real moment for you personally in your career? And and maybe some of the process and the behind the scenes of those things. Sky being one of them.
Sky, yeah. So Sky, I have had a relationship with for years, where we started doing. So Sky came and were like, we want to do more stuff with influencers and online talent. We came up with this format originally, like before it was actually mid-COVID. It was in the August of 2020, and they were like, want to do something to promote our content, and I came up with this idea for a game show that put like Eddie Hearn and Amelia de Boldenberg, so like a mainstream talent and online talent, and they talk about what they like to watch, and I thought that was quite an interesting tension. That then, and I used to throw up every single day before the shoot. I was so nervous back then. I think I used to literally like would shoot every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks we'd do 2 episodes, and I would literally, and it was working with like amazing talent, like everyone, like I say, from your Eddie Hearns to Mo Gilligan's to Lorraine. my like I grew up watching Lorraine, so I was like, this one's for my mum. And like on the outside you're trying to like you're swan like, right? You're like okay, everything's fine, everything's cool. On the inside I'm like, this is bad. Like this is I'm figuring it out. Like how do I do it? How do I deal with this? How do I deal with these big personalities that have all got, are used to working with big experienced directors, that imposter syndrome that starts setting in. But it was incredible like training camp for me, because then I went from that. We did I think like 20 episodes in the end over the years, and it was like by the end of it I could do it with my eyes shut. By the end of it I was like, I feel really comfortable in what I'm doing and how I'm doing it and how we're making this show. And then that finished, and then the next season we were basically like, what else can we do? How do we push this on? And I'm always about like, how do we make something really creative and interesting and different? How do we take a brand that is expected to do this and do this with it? And so we were going around in circles of trying to sell. How do we sell Sky Glass, the TV, to like young audiences? How do they get to know about it and what it does? We'll like to do a game show. Nothing. All these ideas weren't really sticking. And then I was on a train back from Margate. I'd gone to Margate because I was just like, I need some space. In London, it's very difficult to think. And I'm sat on the train on the way back, literally like a day trip, train there and back. I'm on the train on the way back, and I start writing this script. I'm like, it's like called The Infomercial, and I'm gonna, maybe the way to sell this TV and get this TV across is to be really obvious about what we're doing. Why are we trying to sneak it in? Just be honest with the audience and tell them this is exactly what we're selling to you. But like in exchange for you watching this advert, you're also going to get some really interesting content. And I boshed this script out in the train journey and sent it to the exec at Sky, who I've been working with on like all these other ideas. And within about 5 minutes, they were like, "This is it." Like this, and the script didn't really change. It changed bits and pieces. Talent came in and out, but it was essentially like Amelia de Moldenberg going around her mates' houses. She's doing an advert. They can't see the camera that she's doing the advert to. It's like she's in one world, they're in another, and she's like smashing up their TV and replacing it and and delivering this message to the camera as if it's like an infomercial. And that all her friends, Nella Rose and Chunks, Mason Mount, and Olivia Neal and Asim Chowdhury are all just watching on and are like, what's going on? And it was just it was a chaotic idea, and like I rate so highly the Sky team for like buying into that. Is brave, a word that's massively overused in that world, but like it was brave. It was like, how can you picture what this is going to be when none of us really know? Like it's and you're using non-traditional actors to do acting, but yeah, that was like a huge project for me. And there are a bunch of TV ads called The Underdogs that are done by a director called Mark Malloy for Apple, and it's about four characters that kind of live in this alternate universe, and they use Apple products, stuff like that. And I was always inspired by that, where I thought, that's so interesting that I'll happily watch an 8-minute advert, because the content's it's a short film and it's good storytelling. So yeah, that we did that, and I think that shoot was one of those moments where I looked around and I was like, I remember looking at my first AD, my assistant director, and Danny was like, "This is something different, isn't it? Like this feels different. It feels like we've climbed a level. We're doing something big, a big idea that feels a bit experimental, but also the crew was massive. It was a 3-day shoot. It felt like a big deal." and again, at the time, you're trying to play it cool, right? You're just like, this is fine. This is totally normal.
I got this.
Yeah. But like, it was, and it was an amazing experience, and it all went really well and was well received, and opened a lot of doors for AfterParty as a company and for me. And I think as well was like, sometimes every now and then a piece of work comes along that you're like, I can, like, this is me. Like, this isn't just me doing what I think you want. This is like, I believe in this piece of work, and all the crew believes in it, and everyone's working at their like flow state. I'm sat in the edit, and the editor's doing an amazing job, and all the crew on the days, everyone was working at like, you're working with, surrounded by people at the top of their game, all killing it, all doing their thing, and it's just amazing to watch. I think that's the privilege of this job, is getting to surround yourself with really like people that are way more talented than you and watching them do their thing.
If I'm 18 years old and, as you say, maybe looking to go to film school or just looking to take the plunge now, what advice would you be giving to me to start?
Yeah, it's something I often get asked because I didn't go to uni. So like, everyone's like, do you need to go to uni to be a director? No is the obviously one of the answers, but like, I think that knowing the rules is really important to subverting them. I think that there's an element of film school that I miss, like wish I'd have done, which was like learning the rules. I think there's maybe some mistakes that I've made along the way that I wouldn't have fallen into, and I'd have met people, like-minded people, quicker. I think if you don't do that, you've got to like do a lot more hunting. If you're 18 now, it's consuming stuff. I think consuming stuff is like the best way. I go to the cinema like 3 times a week, and watch all sorts of films, and watch YouTube videos and video essays of breakdowns, and my TikTok is behind the scenes film stuff. Like, I think, but I also love going to the other day. I had a spare half an hour in Leicester Square, and I went to the portrait gallery, and I see something there. I'm like, oh, that's an interesting way of like lighting a portrait. I haven't thought about that before. I think consuming as much stuff as possible is a great education, especially now, like there's so much to consume at our fingertips.
Who would you recommend young people consume if you're 18? Because I also think, to your point on rules, I've always been into film sort of traditionally and everything else, and I'd imagine it's harder for this generation who are so used to TikTok and short form and everything being, slightly over convenience, junk food culture of content. It's harder probably than ever to decipher what's good, what's bad, where do I even begin? What would be your sort of digest if you were to give a few recommendations for people?
Where do you start? Wow, there's so much. I think it's finding. I think what's amazing is that they're like this at the minute, or like for me anyway, in my world and the people that I'm surrounded by, there are amazing films that are coming out now where like my cohort of people that were in film school or like have come up around me are starting to make their first feature films, and they feel really fresh and exciting and new. So there's a film called Scrapper that's just come out, Charlotte Regan, she was making music videos when I was like in school, and when we were kind of in the same scenes, and then she's gone the narrative film route and made that film. How to Have Sex by a director called Molly Manning Walker, who was a DP and then has gone into directing. I think it's like, I think these new storytellers that have grown up around that, they know how to hold your attention span. Like, your short attention span, it can sustain a film if it's done in the right way, and if it's
I think it's because I think your point, it's not so much a short attention span, it's just a more brutal one, right? Like, people are just way more cutthroat in what they give their attention to.
Yeah.
But if it's good, they'll watch.
They'll stay, yeah. And I think I think that's it. I think films, I'm a terrible one for like, there are classic films that I've never seen that people are outraged by. I've never seen Titanic. I've never seen Star Wars. I've never seen.
I'll be honest, I've never seen Titanic either. No, never wanted to watch it. I could not care less.
Yeah. But like, try being a director that hasn't watched it. Like, people are like, what?
Yeah.
Like, I can go down the IMDb top 100 films of all time, and I've seen about 20 of them. Like,
who's your favorite director
of all time? Spike Jonze. I love Spike Jonze. I love her. And yeah, I think like his work from film into commercials, like, I think that's something that I love. He did the like Apple HomePod advert, Where the Worlds, with FK Twigs. And yeah, I think I love Spike Jonze. I love Edgar Wright. Like, I love Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead. And that, I think that's a very TikTok style of storytelling now. The crash zooms and the constant, you know, that constant drip of like something's always happening. I think is great. But yeah, I think like I said, I go to the cinema a lot. This week I've seen a couple of amazing films. I saw one that was called like Dream Scenario, and it's about a guy that just starts appearing in everyone's dreams, and he becomes famous because everyone's dreaming about him and he doesn't understand why, kind of thing. And it's all about fame and that kind of stuff. And I think also those films that like touch on points that if you're a fan of YouTube and a fan of like this world, deal with like fame and influence and stuff like that are really interesting. Triangle of Sadness, I think, is another great one that's all about like you know, chasing money and fame and power, and does it ever material, is it what you expect it to be when you get there? The answer is often no. But yeah, I think in terms of, so to go back to your question, if you're 18 now, I think like it's finding like-minded people. I think that there are great like the London Screen Academy, LSA, that's around the corner from here, places like that where you can find other people, other filmmakers, and find your tribe. I think that's really important to like motivate each other and go and make films together. I think that's the best thing I ever did, was go and make stuff when I was 13, 14 with my mates in my garden, like messing around and showing people and just getting in that like cycle of doing stuff, getting a reaction, doing it again, getting a reaction. The only way you learn really is by doing, I think. So, which is why like my route through the work world, I feel like was like suited me best, because that's how my brain learns. And I think that you know, that the sooner you can get onto a set and around people and running and doing whatever, the better. But I think that said, like, all the directors around me have all come through very different routes. There is no one route to being a director. You can think you're going to be a makeup artist and then be like, actually, I want to direct. I want to go across. Like, you can come up through being a director's assistant. You can come up through music videos. Through like, there's all different routes that random people go through. And I think that you never know when you're going into it where you're gonna end up. I remember saying to my old boss, I don't want to be a director. And him saying to me, "You ever thought about being a director?" And I was like, "Nah, not confident enough for that."
Oh, look at you now. Look at you now. One thing I'm really interested in is, to your point on rules and deconstruction and so on, how you go through your creative process. Because like, you are one of the best people I've worked with, beyond a shadow of a doubt. I love working with you. We obviously have done quite a few things together now. Oh yeah, come on. Not just because you're here, even, you know. I would say this to everybody. But let's break down. So let's say the XX Vodka Mixed Berry advert, which obviously did really well and people loved, with the Sidemen. Can you take us through a bit of your process? You get that brief, we work it through, you then write your script, you get to produce it. Like, how does a project like that work for you?
So I think that first thing is like looking at a brief or a script. Like these briefs come in different ways. Sometimes they come in a voice note, sometimes they come in a PDF, sometimes they come in an email, a text, or whatever. A conversation is like boiling down the core of what is it that it makes this product unique. What makes what's the success? What does success look like for this thing? Is it that we're going to make people laugh or cry? Is it that we're going to sell 1 million cans of XIX? Is it like, what's the core of this brief? I think like distilling that out, sometimes like taking notes of the bits around it, but being like, okay, that's the main goal. So with XIX, it's like, it's the first time you've made a canned drink, so it's ready to drink. It's got a flavour to it. Those are the interesting things. So like the packaging style and how people are going to receive it, and it's going into Tesco. So I'm taking those bits, and then I'm like, how do my style is absurd, right? Like I want to do something that's like ridiculous every time. Other directors, you know, I say to people, I'm like, if you don't want this to be absurd, I'm not the director. Like, my brain just tries to make dumb jokes. How do I make a dumb joke or a pun or something like that? So I think like the process for me is going and sitting with it. I come up with my best ideas in the bath randomly. So I will often go and get a brief. I'll literally go and like lay in the bath and be like, okay, what is it?
Yeah.
Come to me. And I think it's almost like I've trained my brain to be like, to know that that's the state that it's that or it's driving, because I think it's stuff where your brain is like taken up by a monotonous task. But yeah, and then I'll sit there and I'll just spitball with myself often, which is quite difficult sometimes because if you're just not in the mood or something else on your mind. And something will come. So that XIX script came because of the bingo line was the first thing that came from it. So it was me thinking, we'd chatted through a few different ideas actually before that, where we were going to shrink the Sidemen down to put them in a fridge and put them next to the can.
The house party.
Yeah, the house party. We had the house party, like all these different things where, like, again, you're being like, not sure about that. And it's, by this point in my career, I'm not like, damn, like Jordan thinks I'm uncreative. Like, I'm just like, okay, that's not quite right for the brand. I get it. Or like the availability of the boys.
Because so much of all of that is around the logistics, right?
Yeah.
And also when you're working like, with everything we do, we have to be. I mean, I've learned through working with the Sidemen, one of the biggest things is the creative detachment, because you've got 7 people who might like or not like what you think is maybe good. So it's almost like not thinking everything has to be good, but not thinking it's the one, or not thinking it's great, just putting it out there and seeing what stakes,
Yeah. And then eventually we land on the idea with of them being like trying to sell to the older generation, and there was mention of like a bingo scene in there, and I just remember being stood there being like, bingo, like someone saying bingo, and then I was cut into a bingo scene, and that kind of set the tone for the whole film, that it was going to be this like montage cut through different scenarios that are like synonymous with, like, you'd never see the Sidemen, never see Vic DJing to an old people's home, you'd never see Simon doing bingo, but they're all like, instantly sells the joke. It's a visual joke. I love a visual joke, whether it's someone walking up a wall or people's heads turning because they see a pair of trainers. I always think that's like, especially when people watch stuff with the sound off, like, how are you going to get them to turn the sound on is often my challenge. So yeah, and then from that point, then the actual process is that then I'm like going back and forth. We kind of circle around. You tend to land on like a concept, and then you can properly get into it. Write the script, or like a draft script, make a treatment. This is what it's going to look like. These are who the characters are going to be. These are the scenes. This is the wardrobe, the production design. The nature of that shoot was like very different to a lot of stuff, but I think because of our background in knowing what the boys' availability was going to be like, and I wanted to go and shoot, I wanted to get a maximum amount of time with them, and we knew that would be maximized by like going to them rather than ordinarily you pick a location, the talent come to you. But we went and travelled around and, had some massive unit moves. We'd go one side of London, we'd go to the other side of London in a day to shoot all these different bits, depending on where they were, because someone would be around the corner from here. And so then that influenced the shooting approach, where I was like, we need to be agile, it needs to be a small crew, minimal lighting, natural light where possible, minimal production design. How do we go to pre-dress locations? How do we go to places where there's going to be free production design? The houses was already dressed, stuff like that, and then dressing around that and being in and out of a location within an hour kind of thing. That was because we need to move on. I'm here, I need to be there in 2 hours time to go and shoot that scene. Allowed us to shoot. We shot that in 2 days, which like traditionally you'd look at as like impossible. I wouldn't shoot anything else like, that had as many scenes as the Sky thing that had 3 days and a crew of like 50, 60 people, and we were shooting with a crew of like 10. Yeah, and then that's it. And then you go and shoot it, and then
that's it.
cross
You
your
hope for
fingers.
the best.
Yeah. Sit in the edit and be like, is this gonna does this live up to the expectation of what we said in the treatment? Is it what we set out to do?
And for young people who are looking at tackling briefs and going into the detail like you've just done, what are some of the core sort of rules of engagement, or the things that you would say like you just need to make sure every response or every treatment, every process as a director needs to tick these things?
I think number one is like put yourself into this treatment, put yourself into the like idea, like make something that only you can make or that's your style, which is easier done as you go through your career. I think like I'm always wary of like, sitting on a podcast and being like, this is what to do is easy looking back. Like at the time,
you don't know. You just got to do, right?
Yeah, bits of these advice, bits of advice that I listen to, I'm like, well, that's never gonna. How can I do that? But I think like I think putting yourself, like making a treatment or an idea or something that only you can make, so that if you don't win the job, it wasn't for you. I think if you're like able to just be like, well, I thought that was how I was going to make that music video, and if I'm trying to, I think sometimes if you try and second guess what you think they want, so if you think, oh, the music video they want is like this, and then you don't win it, you're like, well, that's what you asked for. I think so. If you go and make something where I'm like, okay, this is ridiculous, but it would be hilarious, and it's like often also, I know it's going to be hard work. I'm making my life difficult. I can make something much easier and quicker and cheaper and whatever, but this will get people's attention, or this feels like my tone of voice. I think putting lots of effort into it, and like you're never going to win a job by like giving it 10% of the effort because you think you're not going to win it. Then you won't. You might as well give no percent. I think like putting lots of effort, putting your stamp on it, and I also think like I was listening to a talk the other day about references, putting film references into treatments, and I think what lots of directors are doing now is like AI. I think using AI to, often you're sending a treatment to someone, an agency that maybe can't see what you can see in your brain. You forget that that's the whole point of treatment, is trying to get what's in here to explain what it is. And now with AI, you can go and you can make that scene. You can make that frame. That front cover can be exactly what you have in your brain. So I think it's like staying ahead of the technology to like, especially if you're young now, like that's the edge you've got. That was like my edge over the older generation that were above me, was understanding technology and all these different like social media and stuff like that. And now the generation coming up can understand AI. I'm having to learn it. They can just know it, like, because they're around it, amongst it, and use that to their advantage to take jobs off of me.
Yeah, there we go.
That's the hope.
Or you can hire them. Either one. Okay, I've got one last question for you.
Yes.
To the 21-year-old who can't lose, looking back now, what would be your one message to him?
This is like therapy. My one message, 21-year-old me, don't get lost in the sauce. I think you have to look at why am I here? What is my job? What have I been put here to do? And do the best at your job. Appreciate that it's a team effort. I've got a producer that hates the words "a film by" at the beginning of a film. Like, it's like not a film by Rvbberduck. It's a film by the 100 people in the credits. Like, I think a massive appreciation for people around you that have got you there, whether that's JJ giving me the opportunity to make the film, whether that's Callux taking my phone number, whether that's my partner that's sitting there with me late nights organising the film, putting the film into order, whether that's Mr. Holloway, my media teacher, for letting me do a film project instead of a magazine project. I think I'd go back and be like, just look around you and be like, isn't it incredible that all these people are aligned behind you to lift you up? You're sat on everyone's shoulders, and they want you to succeed, and you need to like shower them with gratefulness because you're nothing without them. I think that's the single thing, and especially being in this world where like a lot of our success is derived off of, if I went and made the stuff that I made for NOTWOWAYS, say, for another brand that didn't have a YouTuber behind it, it wouldn't be as famous work as it is. If I made Can't Lose for some random boxer down the boxing gym, it wouldn't be the film it was. Like, gratefulness to everyone, for you for having me here, for all these, like, I think that's just it. Is like all along the way, you can never be too grateful. You can never be too thankful for the opportunities and the people and the teams and the expertise and the tutors and the mentors and the runners and everyone that's all coming together in our industry to like try and win. I think it's seldom that you find people that don't want you to win, and it's just finding that within every opportunity, and how do you pay that back? How do you give back to people and help them build their careers, or build someone, open the door to other people like the door was open to you? How do you hold it open? I think that's the main thing I'd say to 21-year-old me, because I was definitely lost in the sauce.
Yeah, don't get lost in the sauce,
Don't
kids.
get lost in the sauce.
That is it. I love it. Well, Ben, thank you very much for coming on, man.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Ben, for coming on. I hope everybody at home got something from that as well. If you're a director, you can do it. You can do it like Ben has done it. As he said, there is no one way. There is no conventional route these days. You just have to start. Get the reps in, get going, and you will get there in the end. So if you like this episode, make sure to like, comment, share it with somebody who is trying to become a director next year, and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you back for another episode of Unboxed next week.